Many Koreans, especially those between 40 and 70, are living in a dangerous illusion about their health. They're convinced they're fine. They don't smoke, they don't drink much, they don't have any major diseases, they eat regular meals, some even exercise faithfully. But here's the scary part. It's exactly these apparently healthy people who may be facing a much higher risk of stroke than they realize. And what's driving that risk up isn't medication, it isn't a birth defect, and it isn't a naturally weak body. The real culprit is hiding in plain sight: the everyday foods they eat. According to warnings from many nutrition experts in Korea, there are 5 extremely common dishes that are quietly damaging blood vessels meal by meal, week by week, month by month. These foods drive up blood pressure, make blood sugar swing wildly, and cause a slow, silent inflammation in the arteries, all without the person feeling anything at all. It happens gradually, quietly, but once enough damage builds up, it becomes the perfect spark for a stroke, a catastrophe that unfolds in a few seconds, but can steal away an entire life. The most worrying of all is food number 3, a dish that almost every Korean family eats every single day. Some people eat it 2 or 3 times a day. Because the consumption is so frequent, the harm adds up faster, hits harder, and is much harder to notice. The people who think I'm healthy, I'm fine, are actually the ones at highest risk, because they tend to be overconfident and don't really pay attention to how much salt, sugar, or fat they're taking in. If you're in middle age, or you have parents or relatives between 40 and 70, this is something you simply cannot ignore. The things that seem harmless in everyday meals may be exactly what triggers a sudden stroke, something that doesn't warn you, doesn't go easy on you, and doesn't spare anyone. Pay very close attention to the list of 5 foods below. Just knowing about them and making a few changes could significantly cut the risk for you and the people you love. Why are Koreans so prone to stroke even though they eat healthy? South Korea is famous for a food culture that looks exceptionally clean. Lots of vegetables, lots of soups, not much fried food, very little Western-style grease. That image makes many people assume Korea must have a low stroke rate. But the reality is the exact opposite. Korea still ranks among the highest in Asia for high blood pressure, arteriosclerosis, and stroke. Why? Because what looks healthy on the outside doesn't always reflect what's happening inside the body. First, Koreans eat far more salt than the body can handle. Kimchi, soups, stews, gochujang, instant noodles, pickled foods, all of them carry sodium levels that blow past daily recommendations. When sodium constantly floods the bloodstream, the blood vessels tighten, pushing blood pressure higher. Over time, the vessels lose their elasticity and stiffen, the perfect setup for plaque buildup. This is the quiet footstep of stroke approaching. Second, Koreans consume more fast carbs and sugar than most people realize. Dishes like tteokbokki, sweetened rice cakes, street snacks, milk teas, sugary coffees, they all cause blood sugar to spike and crash. When blood sugar swings up and down repeatedly, the tiny vessels in the brain suffer slow damage. The arteries weaken and the person has no idea it's happening. Third, fermented and heavily salted foods take a toll. Kimchi, the national dish, contains salt, nitrites, and strong fermentation compounds. When eaten daily, these can cause low-grade but chronic inflammation in the vascular lining, paving the way for plaque formation. Comment 1. Korean eating habits aren't bad, but they do have 3 dangerous traits: too much salt, too much sugar, and too many fast-digesting starches. It's the daily repetition that slowly wears the body down over time. Comment 0. Koreans aren't eating wrong, they're simply eating according to their culture. But cultural eating patterns can unintentionally place a heavy burden on the blood vessels. That's why even people who look perfectly healthy can experience a stroke without a single warning sign. A closer look at each dish and why they quietly drive stroke risk through the roof. At first glance, most people think these 5 foods are simply not the healthiest, but nowhere near dangerous enough to cause something as serious as a stroke. But when you break each one down, you'll see how every dish stresses the blood vessels in its own way. And the real danger isn't the portion size, but the daily repetition. Instant noodles. The danger goes far beyond sodium. Instant noodles are often seen as a quick fix for hunger, but few people realize how aggressively the body reacts to them. Beyond the salt, the noodles are packed with fast-digesting starch that spikes blood sugar within just 15–20 minutes. For middle-aged adults, especially those over 45, repeated spikes and crashes can damage the brain's microvessels. And the industrial fats in instant noodles, even in small amounts, contribute to low-grade inflammation when eaten frequently. It's the toxic combination of high sodium plus fast carbs plus eating them on an empty stomach that places enormous pressure on the cardiovascular system. Korean-style barbecue. The real issue is saturated fat. And the cooking method. Barbecue itself isn't the problem. It's how Koreans eat it. Popular cuts like pork belly, neck, and fatty slices are loaded with saturated fat. Once inside the body, this fat raises LDL, the type of cholesterol that sticks to artery walls and forms plaque. Another overlooked factor is the habit of charring the meat. Burnt edges create oxidized compounds that directly irritate and injure the vessel lining. When that lining is damaged, the body responds by forming tiny clots to patch it. But those same clots, if they travel to the brain, can block blood flow, causing an ischemic stroke. Pairing barbecue with soju makes things worse. Alcohol thickens the blood and raises triglycerides, amplifying the risk. 3. Salty kimchi. The most dangerous dish simply because it's eaten too often. Kimchi may be Korea's national pride, but at its core, it's salted, fermented vegetables. And fermentation ramps up both sodium and nitrites. Sodium tightens the blood vessels. Nitrites oxidize the vessel lining. When both hit the bloodstream every single day, the damage accumulates far more quickly than most people realize. Many Koreans eat kimchi 2 or 3 times a day, sometimes with every meal, leaving the body zero time to recover. This is why experts believe kimchi plays a major role in Korea's high rates of hypertension. 4. Tteokbokki. Fast starch plus sugar. A formula that destroys the brain's microvessels. Tteokbokki is addictive for a reason. It's loaded with sugar and syrup, and the rice cakes are made of highly refined starch that gets absorbed almost instantly. A violent blood sugar spike, followed by a flood of insulin trying to bring it back down. When this cycle repeats for years, the tiny blood vessels in the brain and vital organs begin to deteriorate. Worse yet, most people eat tteokbokki on an empty stomach or in a hurry, causing sugar to hit the bloodstream even faster. This explains why someone who looks perfectly healthy may still have thin, fragile vessels prone to rupture. 5. Milk, coffee, and sugary drinks. The silent stroke makers. A morning or afternoon latte may seem harmless, but these drinks deliver the strongest blow to blood vessels. A single latte or mocha can contain the equivalent of 4–6 tablespoons of sugar. Constant blood sugar swings weaken brain microvessels and make them prone to blockage. Even more alarming is silent stroke, tiny strokes that show no clear symptoms but leave behind microdamage in the brain. Over the years, this damage builds up, weakening the brain and dramatically increasing the risk of a major stroke later. Because many Koreans drink coffee daily, sometimes multiple times a day, the cumulative impact is massive. Real stories that make people wake up. When it comes to stroke, most people still think it happens to someone else, to the sick, the elderly, or the weak. But in Korea, countless cases involve people who were completely healthy, working normally, and living active lives, until the habits they repeated for years finally caught up with them. These real stories are the clearest reminder that stroke doesn't spare anyone. Case 1. Mr. A, 52, the man who thought he was perfectly healthy. Mr. A, an office worker in Seoul, didn't smoke, only drank socially, and took regular walks every week. His checkups always looked fine, so he confidently believed he was nowhere near any risk. Every morning for nearly 10 years, he ate instant noodles with kimchi for convenience, then grabbed a latte on the way to work. To him, that routine seemed harmless, even normal, because everyone in Korea eats like this. One morning, while walking from the subway station to his office, he suddenly felt dizzy and collapsed on the sidewalk. Doctors diagnosed him with a transient ischemic stroke. Further scans revealed early arterial narrowing caused by years of excessive sodium and sugar in his morning meals. What shocked him the most was his own realization. I always felt healthy. I never imagined my breakfast could be that dangerous. Case 2. Mrs. B. 48. The tteokbokki lover who looked completely fine. Mrs. B. adored tteokbokki. Because of her busy schedule, she ate it 3 to 4 times a week. She wasn't overweight, had no underlying conditions, and felt perfectly normal. But during a routine health screening, doctors found early narrowing in her brain vessels and abnormal blood sugar fluctuations. The main culprit? The sugar and fast-digesting starch in tteokbokki, which had been damaging her brain's microvessels week after week. After just 2 months of changing her diet, her numbers began to improve. What frightened her most was the realization, I never thought my favorite food could be harming me like that. These two stories make one thing painfully clear. You don't have to be old. You don't have to be sick. You only have to eat the wrong foods long enough, and the body will eventually pay the price. Why do so many people refuse to believe these everyday foods are dangerous? What's interesting and also deeply worrying is that most people simply don't believe their everyday foods could ever lead to something as severe as a stroke. They think it's just fear-mongering, or they assume the foods they've eaten since childhood are safe by default. But 3 key reasons make this denial incredibly dangerous. Reason 1. The damage happens too slowly to notice. If eating something salty once caused immediate headaches or fainting, everyone would be terrified. But the human body works quietly. Blood vessels don't have pain receptors, so even if they're inflamed, stiffening, or narrowing, you feel nothing. This silence convinces people that no symptoms means no problem, while the damage is quietly progressing day after day. Reason 2. Everyone eats it, so it must be fine. A food becomes national not because it's healthy, but because it's everywhere. When you grow up seeing everyone eat kimchi, instant noodles, lattes, and tteokbokki, you naturally assume it's normal and therefore harmless. But the truth is, Korea ranks among the highest in Asia for hypertension and stroke. Popularity doesn't equal safety. It only reflects cultural habit. Reason 3. The body doesn't give warnings. Stroke is one of the few medical emergencies that offers almost no clear advance signals. Many people who suffered strokes only felt slightly tired or a bit dizzy beforehand. Sensations everyone dismisses as stress, lack of sleep, or weather changes. By the time the actual event hits, it's too late to react. And these 3 factors are exactly why people underestimate the danger of salt, sugar, and fast carbs, the very elements hiding inside those 5 harmless foods. If you've ever thought, I've eaten this for years and nothing happened, or if you want me to break down another specific dish, just leave a comment below. I'll be here to help you protect your own health and the health of the people you care about. How to lower your risk without giving up the foods you love. When talking about stroke risk from diet, the goal is not to ban everything you enjoy. The real solution is reducing frequency and adjusting how you eat so your body isn't under pressure every single day. No one is asking you to quit instant noodles, kimchi, or barbecue forever. Small changes done correctly are what bring the biggest impact. 1. Cut back on salt in your daily meals. You don't need to give up kimchi or stop eating soup. Just reduce sodium by 20–30% by choosing less salty kimchi, using less broth when eating noodles, seasoning more lightly when cooking. After a few weeks, your taste buds naturally reset, and the foods that used to taste normal will suddenly feel too salty. That's your blood vessels finally getting a break. 2. Limit sugar and fast carbs. You don't have to eliminate tteokbokki, milk coffee, rice cakes, or sweet drinks. Just reduce how often you eat them each week. Avoid them on an empty stomach. Even swapping a latte for black coffee 2 or 3 times a week is enough to stabilize blood sugar and significantly strengthen the vessels. 3. Add fresh vegetables and fiber to every meal. Fiber slows sugar absorption and softens sodium's impact on blood vessels. A few simple habits help a lot. Wrap barbecue with vegetables. Add greens or bean sprouts to noodles. Include 1-2 handfuls of vegetables in each meal. This alone can noticeably improve blood pressure and blood sugar. 4. Avoid eating too fast when you're extremely hungry. This is when the body absorbs sugar, salt, and fat the fastest, the worst possible timing. Eating something small beforehand, like fruit or a few pieces of sweet potato, helps reduce the nutritional shock to your blood vessels. 5. Drink enough water every day. Water keeps the blood thinner and lowers the chance of tiny clots, a direct cause of blocked brain vessels. Many middle-aged adults don't drink enough water and don't realize dehydration silently thickens the blood. These adjustments don't require giving up your favorite foods or making drastic lifestyle changes. But if you do them consistently, your blood vessels grow stronger, and your stroke risk drops dramatically, especially for anyone over 40. This is the most sustainable way to protect your health while still enjoying the foods you love. Summary and a path forward. Looking back at everything we've covered, one truth becomes unmistakably clear. Stroke is not a random event. It is the final outcome of years of tiny habits, familiar dishes, and daily choices we never questioned. The real danger isn't one unhealthy meal, it's a pattern repeated thousands of times. Koreans and many Vietnamese as well live within a food culture rich in salt, sugar, and fast-digesting starches. These foods are tied to convenience, tradition, comfort, and memories. And because they feel so normal, we rarely stop to see the other side of the story. What the body silently endures after every meal. Blood vessels don't cry out when they're damaged. The brain doesn't ring an alarm when its microvessels begin to weaken. Blood pressure doesn't announce itself before it spikes. Everything happens quietly, like water wearing down a stone, slow, subtle, but inevitable. The truth is this: with small, consistent adjustments, your body can recover far better than you might expect. A little less salt, a little less sugar, a little slower when you eat, a little more water each day. These tiny decisions are what determine the strength of your blood vessels in middle age and beyond. And most importantly, you don't have to give up the foods you love. You just need to eat them smarter, less often, and in the right way. That way, you can still enjoy the flavors you grew up with without sacrificing your long-term health. Stroke doesn't choose its victims, but it always leaves clues hidden in the daily choices we barely notice. Recognize them early. Adjust early. That is the simplest, wisest way to keep your body resilient and avoid risks that never needed to happen.